Hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to this week's Duchenne Method live stream. We're live on YouTube. Welcome to one and all. And what are we doing here? Well, essentially, my friends, we come together once a week on this live channel so that I might invite you into this circle of creation, right? So if you're slowly coming on, please say hi in the comments. And if you're here and you can't write in the comments, it's because you have to create an account on YouTube, the same way you did with Facebook. So if you can create an account on a YouTube, and then you will be able to comment and to join the conversation, which is what I am most excited about always. Good morning. Hey, Sabi is here from Montreuil, France. Welcome, Sabi. I'm so happy that you're here because I am doing this talk today partly because of you, because you requested that we have a talk around the sound of silence. So, what do I do here every week with you? Well, I attempt to demystify the mind-body connection. All things related to mind-body alignment. That is my specialty in my work. I have been working with human bodies in alignment, structural integration, which is a very specific body work modality over the course of 10 to 12 sessions that help to release all of the connective tissue adhesions in your body, where a lot of the time we find stuck emotions, some parts of us that are dormant in the body that can show up as trauma or stuck emotions. So through this process of structural integration, body alignment, I assist you to process these, right? This is through the body. My focus is always body, mind first. So really focus on releasing the body so that we might become more alive, and also realize where is it in our bodies that there are stuck emotions or even some beliefs that might be limiting our own possibility. So every week we show up here together as a tribe, and we discuss all things mind-body alignment. And today we are going to take a deep dive into cultivating the sound of silence as a mind-body alignment healing tool. And it's super important because the truth is that in all of my body work sessions with all of my clients, there are significant moments of silence in the work as a healing tool. So, excuse me, a lot of the time I will invite you to go inwards, as we do here, to go inwards so that we might hear ourselves, literally to listen to our bodies. So today, the deep dive into cultivating the sound of silence is truly a cultivation. It is a practice. You know, over the years, it becomes clearer and clearer to me every single day that we are in the process of a practice. That yes, we have goals, and that's a beautiful thing. I certainly have goals. And that the true healing, the true evolution, it seems, really comes from a daily practice of moving forward through practice one day at a time. Good morning. Hello, Henry. Henry is in the house. Welcome. Wonderful to have you here. If anybody else is here, wants to say hi, please say hi in the comments. I would love to know who's here, because this way we can interact. I can really interact more intimately with you. Good morning. Elise is here. Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Anyone else who comes on, please feel free to comment and say hi. I really want to make this an interactive circle of connection. So with no further ado, we're going to do my little intro just because I think it's fun and I need to practice doing this. So here we go. Welcome to the Duchenne Method live stream. Yay. Thank you for being here, everyone. Yes, good morning. Leanne is in the house from the sunny island of Martinique, I believe, if I am not mistaken. Good morning. I'm so happy that you're here. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump right into this topic. I have a few important things that I hope will be of service to you today. So, first of all, we're talking about this healing tool of silence. And most of you here on this call will already know or may already have a practice of using silence to bring yourselves back to center, as I like to say, to get into the point of midline of your body. So, a lot of the time, what I will very simply do, and I guess I do this every single day now, it's just part of my practice. I bring my hands to my chest, and you can practice with me now if you'd like. Just take a moment to tap in. Let's start right away with cultivating silence inwardly. So, to bring yourselves to center, bring your hands to your heart, one hand over the other, and just for a few seconds, let your body repose. Let your body arrive in this state of presence and silence. So we're going to be here for just 1 or 2 minutes. Let's practice together sitting in silence, and I'll tell you when the minute is up. Close your eyes. Go into your breath, optimally breathing through your nose only. Beautiful. And slowly coming back to center, opening your eyes. And just by doing this for 1 minute together, just for doing this for 1 minute together, share with me in the comments, how do you feel in this moment? Just tapping in to the sound of silence. We did it for literally 1.5 minutes. What happens? What's happened to you in settling down for 1 minute? Share with me in the comments. As we all know, silence is an important tool for healing. All of you who are here, either as craniosacral therapists, Elise is here, she does this work. Sabi is a guide and a coach, she practices this. Maybe others practice this relationship with meditation for yourself or with others. And in all environments, it is a tool for healing. And why? Because as we just witnessed together, silence encourages to slow down. It also incites this relationship with taking deep breaths that automatically help to regulate your nervous system. And it gives us a moment to tune into our own thoughts and feelings so that you can sense what you're feeling and that you can observe your own thoughts without getting involved with them. Silence allows us to just kind of take an overall view, a look on how we're feeling and what kinds of thoughts are showing up in our mind. It's also an opportunity for us to go into a more introspective space, to go inward, and to really allow ourselves to practice being in this moment. It's an opportunity for self-reflection. It gives us a moment to reflect. And the tools of contemplation and self-reflection are also very helpful tools for healing, to take some time to slowly reflect. Of course, when we practice this, it helps us to gain clarity and insight into our emotional states. And if you are like most of us at this time in the world, there is so much noise. Sometimes we can almost say that we can't hear ourselves think. We can't feel ourselves because there is so much distraction. So the idea is that when we start to tap in more deeply to our emotional states, we gain control of how we want to use emotion in our life, so that our emotional states don't overcome us. And that is a practice, because on some days you might wake up depressed or sad, or feeling frustrated, or feeling like your life is just not what you thought it would be. Can anyone relate to that one? You wake up and you think to yourself, gosh, I really did not think my life was going to be this way. And yet, this is how it is. Silence affords us a wonderful practice to be with how we feel, to contemplate, to reflect, without letting negative emotions suck us into this downward spiral. Consciousness and awareness through silence helps us to create a little bit of space between the emotion and having to react from that emotional state. Silence will help create a sense of calm, a sense of peace. And if you did the check-in with me just a moment ago, you might be feeling slightly more peaceful, calmer. And it's very helpful because it also assists with releasing stress and anxiety. Beautiful. Thank you for the feedback here. So I'm reading, Elise feels more settled. Sabi feels relaxed. Leanne, silence, peace of mind, relief in the chest. Beautiful. Henry says, I can gently listen and feel my lungs and sense my eyeballs. Wonderful, right? So you can really tap into these bodily sensations and enliven your relationship with your body. These are really important benefits of relating with silence. And then I'm going to take you into the opposite exploration. And thank you, Sabi, for asking me to bring this topic up, because silence, as helpful as it is, can also be a double-edged sword. What happens when people find it uncomfortable or even frightening to sit in silence? There are reasons why silence can be intimidating. And I wanted to explore a few of those in an effort to go beyond just the positive effects that we get from silence. Because for many people, silence can bring up a sense of fear of the unknown. And it can be an unfamiliar state for some people. If you and I are practice meditation and we practice going into silence or are comfortable living in a silent environment, it is for us a sense of support and ease. But what if you're not used to that. So there's a fear of the unknown with silent, right? You don't know what to expect. If you don't know what to expect, that can be unsettling in your body as opposed to healing. You see what I'm saying? So if you don't have an experience with silent, it can bring up fear of the unknown. You don't know what to expect. You can also have a sensation of being disconnected from others. If you're not used to silence, it can arise, the feelings, the sensation within can arise, that those of being disconnected, right? What happens in silence? I'm no longer hearing, I'm no longer in touch with other people. The absence of noise can intensify this feeling of disconnection. And that's important to know for practitioners, but also for us, if that should happen to you when you find yourself in a state of silence. Also, for people who are unfamiliar with silence, there is a fear of vulnerability. Silence can create a sense of vulnerability. And if you practice silence, you will have had that experience, except that for you, maybe that sense of vulnerability was a positive one. But we can't forget that for those who are unfamiliar with silence, vulnerability can be threatening. It can be scary to feel vulnerable. You can feel alone with your thoughts and your feelings, and that can bring out anxiety in someone's body. The fear of being disconnected from others and the absence of noise. Also, this is a very interesting component of silence. And I always like to bring in a little bit of a cultural component in my talks, because it's a lot of what I've studied in medical anthropology, which is really the evolution of how people heal throughout our lifetime, throughout the human race. How have we evolved? How have our healing systems evolved? That was my particular interest in my years of studying medical anthropology. And so I wanted to bring in part of the cultural conditioning to silence. And before I move on, I just want to make sure that you're tracking with me. Let me know if this is making sense. Let me know if you are resonating with this. So cultural conditioning. In some cultures, silence can be seen as a sign of disrespect or disinterest. So in some cultures, some very lively cultures, where there's a lot of communication, sometimes people speaking over one another, if you are silent, that could be considered a sign of disrespect or disinterest. Something else, cultural conditioning when it comes to silence, is that people may feel pressured to fill the silence with conversation or noise. If there's too much silence, people might feel like they need to say something. Have you ever had that experience? It could have been you with a friend having coffee or tea or something, and then all of a sudden you run out of things to say and you kind of sit in silence, and it becomes wildly uncomfortable. And you feel like you need to speak to fill in the spaces. That's another piece of how silence can be uncomfortable in particular cultures. Also, some people are accustomed to constant stimulation and distraction because it feels safe. This is a really important one. When people feel that they need to be constantly stimulated and or distracted as a means for safety. And I have thank you for the feedback. Yes, it makes sense. Yes, oh my gosh, totally resonates. Great. So I had a client recently that was just that experience where she felt very unsafe in practicing just what we did at the beginning of the session. Excuse me. because she had a very high level of anxiety and nervousness in her body, and she felt like silence really amplified it as opposed to calmed it down. And the culture of distraction and noise right now is very much related to social media, isn't it? So we are constantly, like our phones have really become an appendage, right? They are like our hands, they're connected to our hands. I see it every single day, whether it's on the street, whether I'm um, at the supermarket, no matter where I find myself, even taking a walk. When I do my morning, my daily morning walks, I can see people walking with their phones in their hands. It's an extension. So when you are used to that level of distraction and noise, silence can be extremely threatening. You might feel like you are disconnected from society as a whole. And in those times, if silence becomes unsteady for you, it actually raises your level of anxiety. So it's really important to also address how the discomfort of silence can augment anxiety. And so I'm going to go through in a few moments a few tools for you to use if that should be true for you or with your clients, so that you have a way of integrating silence gently, mindfully, because ultimately all of the work that I'm doing here and in my life, my whole career basically, is around offering tools to help people regulate themselves. And they're just very simple tools that require daily practice as much as possible. So when it's too silent, it might feel unsafe. That's really important. The other one is being in a quiet space with no external input, right? So that sense of flipping in social media or just having noise can be disorienting for people. So they feel literally disoriented, like, what is going on? That my nervous system is having a moment to settle. That can be very disorienting when you're used to constant simulation as a means for safety. So do you see how you're actually tricking your nervous system in building a relationship to safety through noise? So then once silence occurs around you, your system gets disoriented because that's not the usual stimulation that it's accustomed to. And so that might send you into fight, flight, or freeze response. So how we integrate silence in our lives and with our clients, our patients, etc., is super important. We don't want to disorient them. And that can also be a result of integrating silence too quickly. Some people worry that silence will lead to an uncomfortable or awkward situation, especially in social contexts. So imagine yourself being out at an event and it's a meet and greet or some sort of networking or just any type of social event. And you're just standing there in your circle or with other people. And all of a sudden, silence settles in. There is seemingly nothing more to exchange in that moment. Notice how quickly we get uncomfortable in those situations. And that's for all of us. Even those of us who are accustomed to silence will feel uncomfortable in social situations when there's a lull. We've all experienced that. And for those of us who are comfortable with silence, how can we become even more comfortable when those situations arise? Why the constant necessity to have to fill the gaps with some words? Something to consider. The other thing is that we feel pressured, just as I said, to fill the void with small talk or conversation. Because lull in a conversation might lead to uncomfortable silence, that awkward place where we don't quite know what to say. Might it be okay for us to just be in silence for a moment and just enjoy each other's presence? I would say that that is more of a highly attuned behavior in a social context. It's not very easy or even comfortable to do it. But part of what we do here together is to learn to get comfortable with discomfort so that we might just be as we are, how we are all the time in mindful and present awareness. Silence comes with that. Now, finally, negative associations that might be linked with silence. Silence can definitely leave you, or for some, leaving people feeling ignored, neglected, or abandoned. And that works directly in correlation with when we are constantly in need of noise or stimulation. If that should die down, people can easily feel ignored, neglected, or even abandoned. And that's part of a potential trigger that arises from a feeling of loneliness or a traumatic memory of loneliness or of being abandoned. And for many people, they can't quite put their finger on it. They wouldn't say something like, "Ooh, this is too daunting. I'm having a traumatic memory of feeling lonely when I was a little girl or boy," or so on. It's not going to show up that way, but their nervous system will react. And so a lot of the time, what shows up in a room of people is that people will just very quickly leave that particular circle of silence, or they will leave an environment where they feel so uncomfortable because the silence has become too threatening to their nervous system. And so they just want to, of course, take flight. They want to leave. You leave the environment. That is a nervous system reactive behavior. When we practice the art of silence, and we can do this through meditation, of course, but it can also be in your home, just in the morning. You might decide, if possible, if you live by yourself, you can go out for a walk in silence and to slowly start to cultivate these positive relationships. You integrate silence slowly, bit by bit in your life. So it's really important to be kind. Again, we go back to this practice of being kind with one another because we don't know what people have gone through. We don't know what people's relationship is with silence, what kind of traumas might arise in certain environments where people freak out if there's a moment of silence, even in a conversation. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a minute, and I want to ask you if you have any questions or comments based on what I'm sharing with you, any insights. Does that ring true for you? Have you ever been in those types of situations where silence has felt uncomfortable, where you have not known how to react? So let me know if you have any insights for me. It's always super helpful to get your feedback on this, and also perhaps some of your own relationships with this. I'm going to go into offering you some solutions, some possible solutions as to how to deal with silence, both in a way that can promote health and healing for oneself, and also how you can use it in social circles, or perhaps even with your clients. You might have some clients who feel uncomfortable with silence and have expressed that to you. And so one of the things that we can do to gently move into supporting silence with your client, in circles, even with yourself, to feel more at ease in situations where silence is present. So one of the first thing is to basically, as I mentioned just a moment ago, to start by becoming comfortable with moments of silence. to learn to appreciate the value of silence. And the way that we can do that is by spending a little bit more time in silent environments. And this is easy. It could be done at home, like I said, through a short meditation practice, a short check-in contemplative practice. Also, though, if you're going on a walk in the morning, just your 5, 10, 15-minute first thing out of bed walk, and start to practice walking in silence. You're not listening to anything, right? Nothing in the ears, no earbuds, no stimulation of any kind. You're simply going out for your morning walk and intaking the benefits of silence, especially in nature, especially as the first light of day arises upon you. These are all, each and every one of these are super helpful in getting your nervous system regulated. Another way to cultivate silence, to embrace silence as something that can become a positive practice in your life, is to listen through, is actually to learn to actively listen. Learn to actively listen. And this is a big topic that I teach in the art of mindful communication, because everything essentially that I'm teaching and sharing with you is about communication. How do we communicate with ourselves, right? To acknowledge, engage, and support ourselves. All verbs moving into action, a very tender, loving action. So how do we learn to actively listen into silence? Well, you make a conscious effort to listen to the silence around you. Silence is also communicating back to us, isn't it? And also learning to actively listen when others are speaking. This is one of the most helpful tools ever. Have you noticed sometimes when you are listening to someone, especially if it's a heated conversation, that you're already working on your answer? In your mind, the other person's mouth is going, but you're already moving into responding to them. You already have an answer for them. That's the opposite of active listening. Active listening is when I say to you, listen beyond their hearing. So go behind their eyes, go behind their ears, and fully listen to what another person is saying. That is supportive in practicing the art of silence, because you are silent while the other person communicates to you. You are holding silent space. And this might be a very new thing for the person that's speaking to you, because a lot of the time we expect that the other person will interject or will cut us off. We've all had that experience. We probably did that ourselves. The art of active listening is to be silent, to not say anything, to not have a solution for the other person, to simply hold space in silence, and to really actively listening into their speaking. Which brings us to another super useful tool, which is the art of the pause. If you are pausing, right? If someone is talking to you and you're pausing, then you're actually practicing this environment of silence. Sabi says, I feel that being able to sit in silence between two people creates a certain kind of intimacy, as if there is a kind of trust. 100%. Thank you so much. Yes, silence will create a sense of trust between two people. That's absolutely true. And both of you are in this space of silence. You're managing the space of silence, right? So you're in an active practice. And Sabi, I would go further and say that that is part of active listening. You are actively listening and feeling, sensing the energy when sitting with another person in silence. Beautiful. Leanne says, so true. Sabi, feel the same. Wonderful. Sabi says, I wonder if the fear of silence can be related to the fear of death. Absolutely. What a great question. The exploration there is in maybe asking the question, what sort of death? What does the person, or what do you mean by death? Like, really, do you really mean that your body is dead and that you are under earth, like you have lost your life? Or does silence invite a different type, a different interpretation of death? Because there's definitely a death in silence. There's no talking. There's stillness. There is a death of hyperactive exchange. So whenever someone asks about that, it's useful to inquire further. What does death mean? Because it can arise sensations of our body, of our life being ended. And usually there's something else, a little bit more to the surface of that. There is a death of something else, a death of personal expression, the fear of not being heard. So it's a very interesting question. Thank you for asking that, Sebi. Henry says, beautiful topic, powerful knowledge. I can relate. Awesome. Thank you, Henry. Elise says, holding silence is active. Correct. And when an adversary is expecting a verbal response, holding silence is very powerful. Yes. Thank you, Elise. So there is a relationship with holding silence as a means to increase present awareness. And in present awareness, we develop a relationship with mindfulness, with awakening, which is a sensation of power, in the sense of we feel there is a relationship to silence and feeling very confident. When you don't feel like you need to fill the space continuously with words, there is a deep space of personal confidence that arises from just being in space, standing in silence, not constantly having to interject. Beautiful. Yes, exactly. As I said earlier, silence is related to fear of the unknown. Absolutely. Yeah, the fear of emptiness, 100%. So what happens to us if, we're in this silence, there's emptiness, there's nothing happening. Emptiness can be a trigger for some people. I don't want to feel empty. I don't want my life to be empty and meaningless, which in fact, if we turn that on its backside, life is empty and meaningless is also a huge possibility for growth, because you get to create from a blank slate every single day. That is part of a deep belief that I have, is that every morning is a new beginning. My life is empty and meaningless every single morning. So you see how we can play with those. And yes, it can bring up sensations of emptiness and clearly fear of the unknown. Absolutely. Something else that we might do to go into a positive rapport with silence is to increase the quality of mindful attention that you have with your own thoughts and emotions, to continuously be able to tap in. And these practices are very simple and they're not easy. Mindfulness is not an easy practice. Being in relationship, cultivating silence as a tool for healing is one of the most powerful and also not easy. There is a cultivation, which is why I called today's class How to Cultivate a Relationship with Silence. Silence is an opportunity to tune into your own inner voice and to process your feelings. That is so important. If we all could process our feelings on a daily basis and allow ourselves to feel how we feel, that is part of the processing, and usually is most helpful when practiced in silence. So this is why in my practice, when people come to see me, we have an hour and a half session, and most of it is in silence. And within a 60 to 90 minute time lot, what happens is people stand up, get up, and they feel completely embodied because there was a chance to stop the constant chatter, the talk, the invasion of thoughts and feelings that are just showing up, but that really most of the time have no real interest in your well-being. It's just how the human mind works. We are continuously bombarded with thoughts and ideas and sensations and feelings. It's just how it works. We, as these magnificent temples of intelligence, we can choose how much of that gets to reign over us. We have solidarity on our bodies and minds. We can choose to decide what we are going to invite. And that is the power of this work. You get to be in control. You're not controlled by outside forces. You choose. You are in control with yourself and how you feel. And silence is one of those tools. You want to be able to hear yourself process. Finally, or almost finally, I'm going to bring up again this relationship with the practice of compassion. If you are ever in an environment where silence is uncomfortable, bring the practice of compassion to your heart space. Have compassion for yourself. Be kind to yourself. You know, my friends, we all need to teach ourselves to relearn the art of self-mothering. We have to have our own self-care as our first best interest. It's up to us, especially more and more and more, because there's only so much you can reach out to into the world of getting help. And there's a lot of help in the world. You can receive a lot of help. Ultimately, however, you are your most important healer. You are the number one healer for you of your life, to re-mother yourself, to re-nurture yourself. And in what I teach and practice is through the art of compassion, to soften our hearts. And I was just with a client last week who had a really hard time connecting with her heart. I kept asking her, bringing her into an experience of sensation, but the answers were very peripheral. It feels like, I can't remember what she was sharing with me, but she said clearly that she could not go into the heart space. She didn't know what that was. And so I did a little voyage with her to bring her into her heart space. And finally, there was a place of connection. But in particular with this client, there's a lot of fear of being in relationship with the heart because there's a lot of pain in the heart. So all of these practices that I'm inviting you to consider with yourself and either with your clients or friends or family, mother, father, this is with everyone, right? Is to be gentle, to take a gentle, mindful step-by-step approach to assist you in tapping into those places within yourself that are supported by silence as a healing mechanism. I hope that this makes sense. Finally, be open to the possibilities that silence can bring. Silence is an inviting exploration. If we never practice it consistently and with presence, we never get to find out all of the benefits that come from practicing silence. There are many healing opportunities that come through a very simple, loving practice of entertaining what is this relationship that I can have with silence, to develop a more direct and deep connection, to gain insight into yourself, and to very simply appreciate the beauty of the present moment. That's the crux of all that we're doing here together. Leanne says, in silence, we may fear to face ourselves. There is just us. That's exactly right. So what's the fear of facing ourselves? So to go gently into that, right? Because there might also be parts of you that you don't love, isn't it? There's parts of us that we don't love, that we'd rather not be in relationship with. But the truth is, at the end of the day, like I said, you really have to be in relationship with yourself every day. You are 100% responsible for the quality of your life. You are 100% responsible for the quality of your life, for your thoughts, for your actions. There's no one else that's responsible. Unless you're a child, that's different. I'm not talking to children here. I'm talking to adults. Sabi says, I do feel that silence is a space of transformation, correct? In that aspect, as we transform within silence, there can be a type of constant death and rebirth, recreation of ourselves within beautifully. And there's also a very beautiful poetic sensation that you shared here, Sabi. You see how even in the experiential practice of silence, basically what Sabi just shared, you can read the poetry in her language. There's a possibility of transformation. So the other piece with silence and with all other tools that I share with you that I want to emphasize is this relationship to experientialism, that we are in an active process. All of these tools that we explore together is an active process to become activated in our lives, to be in action. And sitting in silence is an action. It's a choice. So, my friends, I leave you with this. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this was helpful. We're going to continue to explore these interesting, deeper related conversations and topics this month. Next week, I want to share this with you. We are going to look at next week, I'm looking at my notes here. We are going to look at the art of self-sabotage. Why you won't commit to your own healing. And when I mean you, I mean us. But that's the title of my talk for next week. The art of self-sabotage. It is an extraordinary art, and we all tend to be so very good at it. We are such great saboteurs. We're going to dive deeper within that next week. So if you have any questions, if you'd like to share this with your friends, it would be so helpful to me if you did. Invite people to join us on the Monday Lives, or just send them the link to the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, Art of Alignment Academy, where we are right now. Please share it with your friends. Invite them to join us if this topic might be of interest to them. I'm really working on building a community of like-minded individuals who want to go deeper into these topics as a resource for healing, a free resource for healing every week. All of these are topics that hopefully you are engaging with during the week yourselves. Thank you so much, Sabi. Yes, I think so. It was a beautiful topic. I appreciate that, Leanne. Thank you, dear. Golden wisdom. Thank you, Anne-Marie, and everybody. Can't wait to see you next week. I can't too. Thank you so much for this conversation, Henry. I appreciate it so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. I will look forward to seeing you next week. And today I'm going to share another little cute outro for this week's blog. Thank you all. Many blessings. See you next week.